members-only webinar from Positive Parenting Solutions. For those of you who are here on the live event, thank you so much for being here. I'm just delighted and privileged to be able to work with all of you. For those of you watching this on the recording, glad to have you with us as well. So I have a lot to cover with you tonight, as always. My promise is that you are going to walk away from here with a plan. No matter how stressed you feel right now, no matter how exhausted you are right now, you're definitely going to have a plan. In terms of our agenda, I want to talk about why our kids really battle us at bedtime in the first place and really get to the root cause of those behaviors. I'm going to give you a 4-step action plan that you can begin using as soon as you feel comfortable. I want to talk about all of those what ifs. Well, what if my kid does this or that? And hopefully answer all those questions. I want to give you some important cautions which could undermine your success in using the plan. And as always, I'm here to be of service to you, and I will stay on as long as we have to make sure your questions are answered. There is a note-taking guide for this session. Hopefully you have it. If not, I'm going to put it in the text chat down below, and that has a lot of information in it. So I definitely recommend that you use it if you have it. Everything that we talk about tonight is going to come from the foundation of Adlerian psychology, which you're all very familiar with from the online course. It is going to be rooted in the principles of positive discipline as well. And I'm also drawing from leading sleep experts. Now, let's talk about whether you really have a sleep problem or not, because there's a tendency to think, oh, well, this is just a stage, or she's going to grow out of it. And there are a couple of questions that you can ask yourself to determine whether or not this is really a problem for you. If your child's sleep pattern is creating stress for you, if it is negatively impacting time or intimacy with your partner, if it's causing you to feel sleep deprived or irritable and making you dread the bedtime routine, if you can answer yes to any one of those questions, that tells you that it's probably time to make some improvements in this department. And maybe you can tell us in the text chat if you answer yes to any of those questions. The other thing we have to look at is the sleep problem a problem for your child? And the thing that we have to remember is poor sleep affects your child's daytime habits. It affects her mood, it affects her behavior, and it affects her learning. So let me jump back to behavior for a minute. Those of you who work with me on coaching know that this is something I always get into right away, because very often problems with daytime behavior, whether it's whining or tantrums or whatever it might be, is very often rooted in poor sleep habits. So that's something that I usually dig into right away. Learning is another big thing. Our kids are learning so much at this age. And what's so interesting is there are so many cases where the children have been diagnosed with ADHD, but actually it's sleep deprivation. A recent study said that children who lose as little as 30 minutes per night of sleep exhibit the typical symptoms of ADHD. A recent report found that 28% of kids exhibited ADHD symptoms but didn't have ADHD. So that's obviously quite concerning. So as always, when we're looking at misbehavior, we want to dig a little bit deeper and get to the root cause of the behavior. So as we look at what motivates their behavior at night, again, we go back to the principles of Adlerian psychology. When it comes to sleep problems in general, there are usually 4 primary reasons. Number 1, insufficient attention and autonomy throughout the day. Parents reinforcing the wrong behaviors, poorly structured routines, and a lack of limits or a lack of consistency enforcing those limits. And we're going to address all of those things tonight. Now, you know from going through the online course that our kids have a hardwired need for attention and power. That is just the way they're wired. It's non-negotiable. There's no getting around it. So if we think about their attention bucket and their power bucket, we have to make sure that every single day we're giving them a sufficient dose of each. Because guess what? If we don't give them enough attention during the day or autonomy, power during the day, they're going to get it at night. So as we look at that attention, they need our one-on-one attention, that mind, body, and soul time that we talk about in session 1 in the course. They need to feel that emotional connection to the people who are most important to them, which is you. And they need that sense of, yes, I belong, I'm connected. And that's all part of the sense of belonging that we talk about in session 1. They also need that positive power, which comes from feeling significant, having a sense of autonomy, and some control over their own world. If your kids don't have some sense of age-appropriate control over their life during the day, you can bet they're going to probably try to get it at nighttime. We refer to this as the vanilla ice cream effect, and that probably sounds like kind of a strange concept, but hopefully it'll make sense as I explain it. This vanilla ice cream concept comes from a parenting educator, Vivian Brault, who I learned from many, many years ago when I was the crazy yelling mom. You all have heard that story before. But let me tell you how the vanilla ice cream effect applies to bedtime behavior. What do kids really want? Well, we know what they really want. They want that positive attention, the connection. They want that positive power. Think about those needs as chocolate ice cream. That's what kids really want, is chocolate ice cream, that attention and power. However, when kids misbehave, particularly at nighttime, what do? Well, we give them negative attention and power through our reprimands, punishment perhaps, when we get frustrated and angry, when we feel helpless. Those feelings on our part give our kids a huge hit of power. So they're getting this reinforcement. They're getting that negative attention and negative power through their behavior at bedtime. So think about bedtime. That is the perfect storm, isn't it? Because we love these people, but you know, come 8 o'clock at night, we are ready for them to be in bed because we're exhausted and we want to get on with our evening as well, right? We're tired, we're vulnerable, so it becomes the perfect storm. Basically, what our kids are saying when they're acting out at night is, well, since you're not giving me what I really want, I'm going to demand your attention at bedtime. Because guess what? When I ask for one more drink of water, one more kiss, I pretend that I'm scared. I refuse to fall asleep unless you lie with me. Well, at least I have your attention, and I keep you with me longer. That is a total win when you're a kid, right? That's that perfect storm. And that's not all. When you get frustrated or angry with my bedtime demands, I'm going to show my power by turning bedtime into a power contest night after night after night. So you've heard us say this before, kids will get their attention and power one way or another, and bedtime is the best way to do it. Now, I remember back when my kids were younger, and I think I've told many of you the story before, my second one, Brent, was a very strong-willed child. And I remember him not sleeping. It was nap time, and he came out of his room, and I was just at my wit's end, and I said, Brent, you will go to sleep, in this crazy yelling voice. Well, right. You know, he's probably thinking, yeah, right, you can't make me sleep. And that's the deal. I could not make him sleep. And as we think about behavior, we have to remember that human beings are born with free will. They have the free will to listen and cooperate and go to bed when we say, and they have the free will to dig in their heels and fight us every step of the way, like little Brent McCready did all those years ago. In the end, it is always their choice. We can't make them go to sleep. So we have to use tools and strategies that work with their need for power, that do the right thing to teach them to go to sleep in a way that's good for them. And that's what we're talking about tonight. Bottom line on this is not enough positive attention and power during the day means more power struggles at bedtime. So this, again, is one of those non-negotiables, but it is just a fact of life. So let's talk about what's not working and why. Perhaps some of the things that are going on right now at your house, they're not working, and why that might be. First thing I want to talk about is sleep associations. Sleep associations are exactly what they sound, things that kids associate with going to sleep. Well, let's take a look at some of those things. Maybe it's a pacifier. Maybe it's nursing the child to sleep, giving him a bottle, staying in his room until he falls asleep, rubbing his back, lying in bed with him. These are all things that parents frequently do because we're desperate to get these people to go to sleep, and we'll do whatever it takes. Unfortunately, when we do these things or use a pacifier, for instance, it creates a negative sleep association, meaning the child can't reestablish the conditions that were present when he fell asleep. So if he wakes up in the middle of the night, he can't recreate that. And so he cries or yells until somebody comes and recreates that for him, brings the pacifier back and puts it in his mouth. I remember making about 85 trips a night back to the crib to put the passy in his mouth. So those negative sleep associations really get us into trouble because the child can't recreate them on his own, and they need us. And every time that we run back to the crib to replace the binky, that's a temporary fix, and the kid goes back to sleep, but it's reinforcing the wrong behaviors. It reinforces that, hey, when I cry out in the middle of the night, no matter what time it is, mom or dad are going to come running to my rescue. So temporary fix, but long term, it's a big problem. So let's take a look at some of the things that I found from your registration forms that you all are doing. Now, you may do some of these or all of these, but these are some of the most typical things that I found in your registration form. First, the parent who lies with a child until he falls asleep. Very common. Primarily, we do this out of desperation. But what does that reinforce? That the child is incapable of soothing himself, and the parent will do whatever it takes to get that child to go to sleep, which is a fact, but again, it's reinforcing the wrong behavior. Or the child stalls and drags out the bedtime routine with another drink of water, another kiss from daddy, whatever it happens to be. Then what happens is we put up with that for a while, and then we've had it, and so we get angry and frustrated. Well, what that reinforces is that those undue attention behaviors, they actually work to keep us busy with the child and keep giving him attention. And when we get frustrated and angry, it reinforces that the child can be successful engaging us in a power contest. For the child who wakes up in the middle of the night and he cries for us to come in the room, again, it reinforces that he can't put himself back to sleep, and he can demand attention from us anytime he wants, and we'll give it to him. Again, we're reinforcing all the wrong behaviors. When he comes into our bed, even if the parent protests, the child will go back to his own bed. That reinforces that mom or dad can be manipulated, especially when they're most vulnerable. And when are we most vulnerable? At night, because we're exhausted. We just want to get some sleep. So again, we'll do anything. So the child learns that we can be manipulated at that time of night. Temporary fixes and reinforcing the wrong behaviors. So as you can tell, we're going to work on not reinforcing those same behaviors. Now, here's the point that I want to make here. As goes the night, so goes the day. So if you are having these undue attention behaviors all night long and you're giving in to them, you're going into their room, you're lying in bed with them, they're able to come into your bed, you're giving in to their demands for attention and power at night, why wouldn't that work during the day, right? So they're going to think, well, if that works at night, and dad gives me what I want and jumps through hoops for me, why won't he do that during the day? It doesn't make sense in their minds. So one of the things that I find almost always happens is when parents fix the bedtime, the nighttime routine, the daytime power struggles start to become fewer and fewer, because as you start to set limits and boundaries at night, then you're more successful in setting boundaries and limits during the day. So the good news in all of this is as we fix the bedtime thing, you're going to be able to fix the daytime things more easily as well. So Jane Nelson, who many of you probably know is a renowned positive discipline educator and author, in her book Positive Discipline for Preschoolers, said, giving in to a child's continuous demands during the day or at night is not loving behavior. Children don't feel safe when the adult fails to establish clear boundaries. And allowing a child to fall asleep on her own is a lifetime gift. And that's what I want us to think about tonight. We're not just solving a problem for you. We're not just trying to make your life easier, which, by the way, it's going to be. We are giving the child a lifetime gift of being an independent sleeper. That's exactly what we're going for. So let's talk about our goal, our target. That is for your child to become a competent sleeper. I am going to suggest that you eliminate the terms, oh, good sleeper or bad sleeper from your vocabulary. The minute you identify your child as a good sleeper or you were a bad sleeper last night, you're putting value judgments on it, which only escalates the power struggle. So what we're going for is the competent sleeper or the independent sleeper, meaning he falls asleep quickly on his own, sleeps through the night, he wakes up easily, he naps as appropriate for his age, and functions well during the day. Now let's talk about that nap for a minute. I have parents that say, well, he doesn't sleep well at night, but he will take a 4-hour power nap in the afternoon, and this is for a 2-and-a-half-year-old. Well, that's not appropriate for a 2.5-year-old to take a 3 or 4 hour nap. That tells you that we have a problem with the bedtime routine because they've got to do so much catching up during the day. So we want them to nap as appropriate for their age. So our 4-step plan that I want to talk about tonight for curing the bedtime blues begins with giving your child more chocolate ice cream. Remember, chocolate ice cream is what your kids really want, that undivided attention from you in their attention basket, that need for positive power. That's what our kids really want. That's what they need at a core emotional level. So let's just give it to them. It'll be a whole lot easier if we just give them that up front. So let's define some of our tools for chocolate ice cream. First, of course, Mind, Body, and Soul Time from session 1. If it's been a while since you've been through that session, please go back to it and get back on that process. Even just 1 time a day with Mind, Body, and Soul Time for each of your kids will make a huge difference in their overall behavior, not just at bedtime. Our calm voice, encouragement, taking time for training, all of those tools found in detail in session 2, and giving them lots of positive power through choices in session 3. So my encouragement to you is to go back through sessions 1 through 4, really, because there's just a ton of information on giving kids attention and power, that chocolate ice cream that they really need. And when you start doing those things and maybe getting back on track for some of those tools, you'll find a huge improvement in terms of their behavior. I recognize that chocolate ice cream takes time and effort, especially Mind, Body, and Soul Time. I know that's the hardest tool for parents to do. It is the most powerful, but it's the hardest one because we're so busy and it's hard to do it. But if you can just work out a routine and a structure for that, just 10 minutes a day with each of your kids, again, you're going to be rewarded with good behavior from them. So a 10-minute investment up front, I'm telling you, you'll get that back tenfold in good behavior, especially at night. So really focus on that. The other thing I want to talk about is make routines the boss. This is a biggie in terms of curing the bedtime blues. So let's talk a little bit about how to do that. That slide is kind of hard to see, but what I want to ask you is your child getting enough sleep? As we look at shoring up our bedtime routine, we have to make sure that we are allowing for her to get the sleep that her body actually needs for her age. So your child's probably not getting enough sleep if it's hard to wake her, if she's sleeping an extra hour or 2 on weekends, if she's catnapping in the car or catnapping on the sofa late in the afternoon, if you notice the behavior decline through the day, or if your child has trouble concentrating, that may be an indication that he's not getting enough sleep for what his body needs. What we find is that most kids get much less sleep than their body needs. And for parents who have trouble getting their kids to sleep, or their kids won't fall asleep quickly, they think, well, they just must not be tired, or my kid doesn't need as much sleep as other people. Well, that's not the case. Kids within, a 30 to 45 minute range need about the same amount of sleep per age, right? Age appropriately. So your kids probably do need just as much sleep as others, but we've missed that sleep opportunity. And when we do that, our kids get ramped up and agitated. For us, when we get overly tired, we just get grumpy and exhausted. They get agitated and amped up, and then it's even harder to get them to sleep. So one of the things that I want to talk about is how much sleep your kids need, and this is on your note-taking guide. Take a look at what age your kids are and how much total sleep they need, a combination of nighttime sleep and daytime sleep. We want to make sure that we're in the range there of, within 45 minutes to an hour at the most difference, but really take a look at that and figure out, okay, how many hours are we really talking about, and then based on that, where do we need to back up the bedtime? So let's talk about the nighttime routine, what it should look like, how do we structure it so it's going to give you the very best results. So let's talk about bedtime, lights out time. The first thing we want to do is determine that ideal lights out time based on the sleep chart. So when your kids have to get up in the morning, and so what time do they need to be going to bed at night? And remember, Lights out time is different than when we start the routine. So if you're spending 30 minutes or so in the bedtime routine, you need to consider that. But what time do you want lights out? I would encourage you to start for an earlier bedtime rather than later. All right, that's always going to be a better bet. Once your child becomes a competent sleeper, which we'll talk about how to do that in a minute, you'll start backing that bedtime back. So if you know that your ideal bedtime is 8 o'clock, but your kids aren't really falling asleep now till 9:30, once you put this sleep training in place that we're talking about, then we'll start backing up, 15 minutes or so at night until you get to the ideal time. A really important point to make is when we're looking at bedtimes, we must keep the bedtime consistent between weekdays and weekends because your kids' bodies don't know the difference. And so if we put them consistently to bed at 7:30 during the school week or the work week for you and then let them stay up an hour and a half later on the weekend, it messes up their whole system. So as hard as it can be for you, because it really requires that you keep to a schedule, we have to keep it consistent between weekdays and weekends. All right, so as you're establishing your routine, figure out how much time you're willing to spend on the bedtime routine. It should not be a big, long, drawn-out process. It should not be. 30 minutes at the most, all right, for your bedtime routine. If your child is pretty verbal, you want to get some input from them on what they want in the bedtime routine. What's most important? Do they like to lay and talk about their day? Do they like books? Do they like to snuggle, listen to music? What is it? Get input on what they love most in the bedtime routine and incorporate that. Certainly all of the bedtime routine activities should be very laid back. We don't want to be jumping on the trampoline or wrestling, dads, before the bedtime routine because that doesn't help them fall asleep. Once you figure out what you want in your bedtime routine, of course, we're going to put that in a when-then format. You probably remember that from session 3, super important, all right? You want to let your when-then routines be the boss, meaning the yucky stuff gets done before the fun part of the routine. So your when-then routine might look like this. When you've had your bath, your teeth are brushed and flossed, your pajamas are on, your clothes are picked out for tomorrow, and if your kids go to daycare or preschool, the backpack is ready to go, then we'll do stories and snuggles. But guess what? Lights are out at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, whatever your time is. So if you dilly-dally through the whole routine, then bummer, we're going to run out of time for stories. But you can try again tomorrow, and I'm sure we'll get it done more quickly. So you always want to have that when-then routine laid out so the yucky stuff gets done before the more fun parts of the day. And a 2.5, maybe certainly a 3-year-old can work themselves through a when-then routine. I like to have it in a checklist format, in pictures for younger kids, words for older kids, and let them manage their way through the bedtime routine. Now, a couple of important things. If you have been lying down with your child until she falls asleep, Jill, and I know some others of you, let's build that into the bedtime routine. So you can still lie down with her, but it's for a designated time. So I'm going to lie here for 5 minutes. You make it a finite amount, and then you're going to be leaving the room. So the laying down and cuddling and snuggling, that's part of the routine. It's not something she demands. Okay, do you see the difference there? It's something that we have agreed on. We do every single night. It's not something that she demands for you to do and so she can fall asleep. Really important distinction. Now, once you've established the when-then routine, you want to practice it because, of course, as my husband always says with his soccer team that he coaches, practice makes permanent. So you want to practice the when-then routine. Have them go through the when-then routine checklist. And for this, marketing is everything, right? So set the stage. You know, you're really growing up, and I know that you can go to sleep on your own, and I know that you can use the when-then checklist. You might want to use a timer. The one that we love is the time timer. In fact, I even have one right now. This is a really big one that I like. The reason I like this timer is because can you see the big red dial? And it's very visual, especially with kids with learning differences. It's just very visual and they can see it. That's one option. You can buy a physical timer like this. They also have apps that you can get for your different devices. Definitely use that visual reminder like a timer so they can work their way through the checklist. And again, the more they practice it, the more they'll get comfortable with it and be able to use it. What I want to remind you about the checklist, that it is a checklist. It is a self-management tool. It's not a reward or a sticker chart. Please, if you haven't been through session 2, please go through that and learn why rewards and sticker charts are not effective. In fact, they undermine your success. So that's not what this is. It is a self-management tool so she can manage the checklist. And when she is sort of stalling, you can say, okay, sweetie, what's next on your list? All right, she can manage herself through that checklist with a little help from you to start with. So you're going to practice that routine. That means role-playing it start to finish. So maybe this weekend or whenever you decide, once you have that when-then routine all set up, you're going to practice it start to finish, whatever time you would normally do it, and go through the whole thing. And practice how you're going to leave the room after the last hug, and she's going to go to sleep on her own. Then, this is really important, anytime you role play a new behavior, you want to switch roles so that the child can take you through the bedtime routine. So you pretend like you're the child, she's the mom, and she's going to take you through the bedtime routine. The other thing we always talk about is controlling the environment. So what that means is be prepared. So you may want to have a comfort object or a transition object that she enjoys and will give her a sense of comfort when she goes to bed. That can be a blankie, whatever it is. But also make sure it's something that she can get to in the middle of the night. Remember, we don't want to have those sleep associations that she can't recreate in the middle of the night. Also, be prepared for the things that your child normally requests. So if one of the stalling techniques is another drink of water, well then have a little sippy cup in the room with a little bit of water in the sippy cup that you can put on the night table, and he can help himself if he gets thirsty in the middle of the night. Now, you wouldn't want to have formula or a bottle or something like that, but a little sippy cup with a tiny little bit of water is perfect. Give him the power to get through the night on his own. He does not need you to come in and give him a drink of water. So be prepared for all of those things and include them in the nighttime routine. If she wants a little light, have a little night light, a 15-watt night light that you can get from Home Depot that she can turn off and on if she wants that in her room. So be prepared for all of those things. The other key here is as you're going through the bedtime routine is we have to be fully present in mind, body, and soul. Remember, they must have our one-on-one undivided attention. And when we are chopping them through the bedtime routine, come on, we got to go, they know we're not present. They get agitated and they're going to want to stall and use all of those tactics to keep us with them longer. So be fully present, limit it to that 30 minutes at the most, and then be on your way. So you've gone through this whole routine, you've done it in a when-then format, you've practiced it, and now it's showtime, right? It is time for you to tuck her little self and her little bear into bed, and hopefully she's going to go off to sleep, and it's going to be a wonderful and beautiful thing. So when you put her down, all right, this is important. When we're starting this process, you're going to put her down to sleep when she normally falls asleep, all right, even if that's later than the desired bedtime. So let's say right now you've been putting her to bed at 8 o'clock, but she dawdles and asks for one more drink of water and stalls and all of those things, and in reality, she's not falling asleep until 9:15 or 9:20. Make 9:15 or 9:20 the bedtime. All right, I know that's later than what you want, and we're going to back it down earlier once she is trained on how to go to sleep on her own, but start with that time where she would normally fall asleep, and that's when you put her down to bed. When you do put her down, make sure that she is drowsy but still awake. This is very important, all right? If you've been nursing them or falling asleep with them or rocking them to sleep, not a good idea, because remember, they can't recreate those sleep associations at night. So put her down when she is drowsy but still awake. The sleep lady, Kim West, who I told you about, uses the 1 to 10 scale. So 1 is, wide awake and 10 is sound asleep. You want her to be somewhere in like the 7 range. So just make sure that she's still awake. And then, of course, let her fall asleep under the same conditions that are going to be present in the middle of the night. So no nursing, I mean, you can nurse her, but make sure she's still awake when you put her down. You're not going to rock her to sleep, no pacifier, that whole thing. All right, so hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Now, once you do that, when she goes off to sleep with no fussing at all, oh, it's going to be so wonderful, and you're just going to be in bliss and doing the happy dance. So if that's what happens, then great, you know this whole process worked. If that doesn't happen, and she's still fussing or crying or coming out of the room or whatever it is, then we know we have some work to do. We have a little bit more training to do. Not a big problem. We've totally got you covered there. All right? So step 3 in curing the bedtime blues is to begin self-soothing training or sleep training. That's what we're going to work on now. So let's talk about what that sleep training would look like. And guys, I see all your questions on the side, and I'm going to get to all of those at the end, I promise. I will stay on as late as I have to answer every question for you. So let's go to the self-soothing training, what that looks like. So again, we've put her to bed. It didn't work. She cried and fussed, and it was like a big old deal. So we know that tomorrow we need to take some time for training. So again, you're going to remind her of the expectation that she's really growing up, and you know that she can go to sleep on her own and sleep through the night. You're going to role play the routine again, start to finish. You're going to switch roles. Same thing that you did before, you're going to do it again. Then you're going to decide what you will do and reveal your plan in advance. This should sound familiar from sessions 3 and 4. So let's talk a little bit about that. We're going to start some training on self-soothing, all right? Self-soothing training, or the progressive weighting approach. The objective of this training is to remove the vanilla ice cream, all right? Remove all of those sort of unhelpful payoffs that we do, rewarding the wrong behaviors. That's what we're doing with this process. I want to remind us of our goal, right? We want to train her to become a competent sleeper so she falls asleep quickly without depending on you or other sleep associations. We want her to sleep through the night. We want her to wake up easily, nap as appropriate for her age, and function well through the day. That is our goal. So let's talk about the plan to get there. So what we are going to do in this training is slowly and gently help her learn to soothe herself back to sleep, or fall asleep independently to begin with, and if she wakes up in the middle of the night, to be able to put herself back to sleep. Now, I'm actually going to give you 2 different approaches to this, all right? So what I'm going to explain now is option 1. A little bit later on in the session, I'll explain option 2. But again, the objective here is to remove that vanilla ice cream. So if your child does call out or cries out for you when you leave the room, you are going to check back with her at gently increasing intervals. Right? And the reason that we're doing this is that being able to self-soothe and put herself to sleep is a learned behavior. If we respond too quickly, the second that she starts fussing, we rob her of the opportunity to learn to calm herself and fall back to sleep. So that is what we're going to do with this progressive weighting approach. What we're going to do on the first night, all right, is after you've put her into bed, good night, I love you, you leave the room, and she starts fussing, you're going to wait 1 minute before you go back into the room. So she's going to fuss a little bit for 1 minute, and that's okay. When you go back to the room in 1 minute, you're going to gently rub her on the back or on the bottom. You're not going to stay long, 30 seconds or so, and say, shh, time to go to sleep, sweetie. I love you. Good night. Very softly, very quietly. You're not going to stay for a long time, and then you're going to leave. And Dawn, of course she knows that you love her because you're going to tell her that. I love you, sweetie. Night, night. And that's all you're going to say. Remember, we want to remove all of that vanilla ice cream, all of that payoff that they've been getting for this behavior. We want them to feel safe. We want them to know that we're there, feel secure, but they're going to learn the process of soothing themselves. So after 1 minute, you're going to go in and do just those things. Good night, sweetie. I love you. Rub their back. Stay for 30 seconds, but not too much longer. And then you're going to leave the room. And then you're going to wait 2 minutes before going back. And you're going to do the same thing again. So she's going to fuss a little bit for 2 minutes or so, and that's okay, because she's just getting used to the fact of how she's going to manage through that. So again, you're going to gently rub their back, stay only for 30 seconds, do the same thing. Shh, it's nighttime, sweetie, I love you, I'll see you in the morning, night, night, baby doll, and then you leave the room. You're not staying a long time. Then, at the next visit, you're going to wait for 3 minutes and do the exact same thing. Now, on night number 1, let's look at where we've been. You went in after 1 minute, and then you waited 2 minutes, and then you waited 3 minutes. So we're progressively increasing the amount of time before we go back in the room. But after the 3rd visit, then we're going to come back every 3 minutes until she falls asleep. All right, so we're not going to keep increasing it. Just go the first night, 1 minute, 2 minutes, and 3 minutes. All right, and then every 3 minutes after that until she falls asleep. Now, if you have a very strong-willed child, this may take a while, but that's okay. This is part of the training process. Now, if you've been doing this and she's kind of like whimpering and almost ready to fall back to sleep, you know what that sounds like? It's not a full-blown wail. She's kind of whimpering and ready to fall back to sleep. Don't go into the room. Don't go into the room. Let her fall off to sleep, even if it's a little more than 3 minutes, unless she really starts getting fired up again, and then you can go back into the room. All right? So it's 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes on night number 1. Now, the question always comes up, is it okay to let her cry? Because that's hard, isn't it? I mean, any parent who has been through this knows it's hard. We don't like to hear our kids cry. It's painful for us. And then, yes, the answer to this question is yes, it is okay for her to cry. I often use the analogy of matches. You know, if your child wanted to play with matches, would you let her? Of course not, right? Well, what if she really, really wanted to play with matches and she cried and had a fit? Would you yell at her? I mean, would you let her cry, continue crying? Yes. It wouldn't matter how much she protested. It wouldn't matter how much she fussed. Not let her play with matches. That is a firm rule. We don't play with matches. What about if she wanted to wear her bathing suit to preschool? Would you let her wear a bathing suit to preschool? Well, no, because there is a rule about not wearing a bathing suit to preschool. I'm seeing the comments about the audio cutting in and out. I'm not sure why that is, guys. I'm sorry about that. So my question was, would you let her wear a bathing suit to preschool? No, you wouldn't, because there's a rule. You're not allowed to wear the bathing suit to preschool. And as much as she fussed about it, you wouldn't let her do it. It wouldn't matter how much she cried. You wouldn't let her wear the bathing suit to preschool. Well, it's not much different at night. If our rule is we have water and we have 2 kisses from daddy and all of those things, and that's our routine every single night, just because she's demanding it doesn't mean that you have to give into it just because she's crying. So again, a lot of this is a training process, and when she starts this process, she's not going to be happy because she wants you to be there immediately when she calls for you. But that is part of the process of letting her learn and to be able to sort of negotiate the nighttime by herself. I know it's hard to listen to them cry, but know that you are slowly and gently, very gently, helping her learn to soothe herself and fall asleep independently. We're going to do everything we can to minimize the tears during the training process, but we're not going to eliminate them completely, all right? Because that's just part of the process. There are going to be times that they don't like this necessarily, but that doesn't mean that it's not doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it, all right? And I'm going to talk about bad dreams in a little bit, Erin. If I forget, remind me. Again, we're going for the competent sleeper to fall asleep on their own and sleep through the night. That's what we want here. All right, so let's look at where we were on night number 1. We went in at 1 minute. We went in again at 2 minutes. We waited 3 minutes, and then we went subsequent every 3 minutes after that. Okay, now what happens if at 2 a.m. she's awake again? What are you going to do? Well, no problem. You're just going to start the same process again. So in the middle of the night, you let her fuss for 1 minute, and then you go in. Do the same thing that we talked about before. Remember rubbing her back, sweetie, it's okay, I love you, I'll see you in the morning, night, night, and then you leave. And then you go back in for after 2 minutes, and then you go back in after 3 minutes, and every 3 minutes after that. If she wakes up again at 4:30 in the morning, you do the exact same thing. So you follow the same time interval each visit during the night. And I'm going to talk about that, Candace, in just a few minutes, about the child who won't stay in the room. But I need you to understand the process first. Now, in a household with two parents, the same parent should make all of the visits in one sleep cycle. So let's say she woke up at 2 in the morning. One parent, so dad goes in at 1 minute, and then he waits 2 minutes, and then he waits 3 minutes, and he goes in every 3 minutes after that. Or mom would do that. So one parent should do the entire visit cycle at one time, because you don't want the child playing one off the other. No, I want daddy. No, I want mommy. So keep it consistent for each cycle. On night number 2, we're going to continue the gentle progressive waiting. Although on night 2, we're going to wait for 2 minutes before we go in. And then we wait 3 minutes, and then we wait 4 minutes, and every 4 minutes after that. Now, I have some parents that they'll start like on night 1, and they'll go 3 minutes, then 5 minutes, then 7 minutes. It's up to you what interval that you do, but I use this one because it's the most gentle, but you do whatever feels most comfortable for you. The key here is that each visit, you're waiting a little bit longer, and each night you're increasing the amount of time before you go in. So you can see how they're learning, they're training themselves to put themselves asleep. And of course, on night number 3, we're going to wait 3 minutes, and then 4, then 5, and then 5, 5, 5 after that. And if they're up in the middle of the night, again, that's no big deal. You're going to wait until whatever time you were for that specified night and continue the process. How long does this go on? Well, you're going to go through this until it would be the time that they would normally wake up in the morning. So if they normally wake up at 6 or 6:30, you would do it until that time and then assume that they're up for the day. One of the things that Kim West, the sleep lady, recommends, which I think is a really neat idea, is when you are waking them up in the morning, she says make it a big wake up, a grand wake up. You turn on the lights, you open the blinds, you use your big voice, good morning. So they distinguish that the morning wake up is different than all of those wake ups during the night. Because remember, when you were going in the night, it was very quiet. Shh, good night, baby, I love you, sweet dreams, see you in the morning. That's a very different than that grand wake up, it's morning time type of wake up. Do keep in mind that the morning wake up time should be the same as when they would normally wake up. So if they had a rough night and they're up 2 or 3 or 4 times during the night, don't let them sleep until 8:30 in the morning. You don't want to let them catch up during the day, or don't let them cat nap during the day. Don't let them nap normally than they normally would because they're catching up, because we are trying to normalize their sleep in a 24-hour period. Now, a couple of tips here, and then we're going to get through a lot of these questions that have come up. Let's be honest. Be prepared for a tough night. This is not fun. All right? Any parent who has been through this knows that there are a couple of nights that are not that much fun. You're going to be sleepy. You're going to be cranky in the morning. You're probably, if you have a partner, you're going to be at each other all day long because you're tired. But it is worth it. So just get one with that idea that you're going to have a couple of tough nights. Then agree on the plan between you and your partner. Know who's getting up when, who's doing the nighttime, who's getting the wake-up time, and know what the plan is going to be, because you don't want to be fussing with each other in the middle of the night about what the process is. Remember that your job is to reassure or comfort your child. All right, that's what you're doing. You're going in to assure her that you're there, you have confidence that she can do it and go back to sleep on her own. But your job is not to make her stop crying and not to help her fall asleep. All right, that's what they are learning to do on their own. This can be hard, I know, but have comfort in knowing that you're training your child to be an independent sleeper, and that is going to be so awesome when that actually happens. Also, don't depend on your memory. Remember that chart that I gave you for each night, how many minutes you're waiting? Cross it off, X it off, whatever you have to do, because in the middle of the night, you're going to be disoriented yourself, so you don't want to try to keep all of that in your mind. So use a clipboard or a chart or something to help you remember where you are in the process. Is this traumatic? Trust me, it is much more traumatic for you than it is for your child, all right? We are very gently increasing those intervals. We're very gently doing it, and you're training your child to be a competent sleeper by delaying your response, delaying that vanilla ice cream. We're trying to get away from reinforcing the wrong behaviors, and that's what we're doing with this process, and your child learns to self-soothe. It does not take long. In fact, I will tell you, I just had an email today at like 5 o'clock, right when I was making dinner, from a woman named Bonnie in our program. She's going through this sleep training right now. And when parents are going through the sleep training, I'd like for them to just check in with me and leave me an email or a voicemail each day so I know how things are going. And so she started this at the beginning of the week. Well, it was actually over the weekend, and she said already, and her son was up all through the night. Already, I think it's been like 4 days. She put him down at 8:30. He slept till 6:30. She said, I have not slept a whole night myself in years. So it totally works. The process is very gentle, and it helps them learn very, very quickly, which is exciting. Now, let's go through some of those what ifs. What if your child won't stay in his bed or won't stay in his room? You know, this process is easier when they're in a crib, right, because they're kind of confined. But if your child sleeps in a big bed or will come out of the room, let's talk about how we're going to handle that. Well, you're going to do the progressive weighting process, but with a slight twist. And what you're going to do is put a gate on the door. So essentially, you're going to make the entire room a crib. Because here's the deal, you can't force the kid to stay in the room, right? We're not going to hold the door shut or lock the door. I mean, it's not safe and it's scary for kids. It's not a good idea. So we're going to essentially make the whole room a crib by using a gate. All right, and Jessica, if your kids, and I'll show you a gate in just a second, the gate should be very secure and not allow climbing, so you wouldn't want to use accordion gates. That would be a bad idea because kids can climb up those. So vertical slats that they cannot climb. Now, when you start using the gate, what you want to do is close the gate when you start the bedtime routine. So the gate is just part of the process. When we go into room for stories and snuggles and back rubs and all that good stuff, the gate is closed. It's just part of the routine. When it's time to leave, you're going to skit and skedaddle out of there and quickly lock the gate behind you. Now, you're going to leave the door cracked because you want the child to be able to see out the gate and not be scared, but you're going to stay out of sight. So you're going to go downstairs, go into your bedroom, whatever you need to do, but stay out of sight. Keep the hallway dim or dark because you don't want all the lights on in the hallway so he thinks he's missing something. And you're going to role play how you're going to use this gate. All right, so when you do your practice sessions, you can role play it with the gate. Remember that the gate is not punishment. The gate is there simply to help you remember to stay in your room. So it's up to you, sweetie. You can either stay in your room. If not, we'll put the gate up so that gate can help you remember, right? It creates that barrier, but you can, again, marketing is everything. It's there to help you remember to stay in your room. When you are starting the process with the gate, you're going to do the exact same thing with the progressive weighting, but instead of going into the room, you're only going to go to the gate. So the first night, after the first minute, after you wait that 1 minute, you're going to go to the room and from outside the gate, say, sweetie, it's bedtime now. Get back in bed. I'll see you in the morning. I know you can have a great night sleeping by yourself. I love you. Night, night. And then you walk away. Even if he's standing at the gate, just as pitiful as all get out and crying, that's okay. He's expressing his dissatisfaction. He's not happy, but don't go into the room. You're going to continue the process. Come back wait 2 minutes and then come back. Do the same thing. Stay outside the room. Come back at 3 minutes, and then every 3 minutes after that. All right, on night 2, you're going to start at 2 minutes or whatever your interval is. So you just stay at the gate and don't go into the